Hey, hi, Lawrence. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Maybe you can
Hi,
introduce yourself.
sure, Joshua. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Um, so for the wonderful people looking and listening on, my name is Lawrence Arjoon. I'm from the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, where Josh is also from. I'm the CEO of the Heroes Foundation, and we are a proactive, prevention-based NGO that is really focused on inspiring young people, inspiring children, inspiring youth to find the hero within themselves. And for us, that is helping young people to find the courage and the ability to overcome whatever challenges they may be facing, build safe and sustainable lives for themselves, but also go on and contribute and give back to society to make it better.
Oof. What a mission. So let's get right into it. What was the moment or experience that set you on this path with the Heroes Foundation?
So before I came to the Heroes Foundation, I worked in the energy sector doing corporate and government affairs. And I was generally the youngest person in the room of my peers. Um, while I was having that experience in the energy sector, I was also volunteering at the Heroes Foundation. And I was seeing and feeling the challenges of trying to do things differently in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly as a young person through my work experience. The company I was a part of, we were the first local natural gas company ever in the country. Started from scratch, built by a bunch of locals, doing something that people thought was impossible. Um, and my experience there was completely different to the potential I kept seeing from the young people in the Heroes Foundation program when we interacted with them. Young people who saw a whole world of possibilities and were willing to go after it and put in the work and fight for this better future. So there came a point in my career where I thought about what is the world that I want to live in? What is the country that I want to live in? And how can we make this better? And it really came down to how can we give the young people a solid, strong foundation to do better than everybody who has been gone before them and who are currently here right now.
Yeah. What is the country that you want to live in?
I actually asked this to about 200 young people.
Wow.
Um, and it came down to it was actually what is the world that you want to live in? Because we were talking about sustainability. And it came down to, they want to live in a world that is peaceful. They want to be at peace. They don't want to see fighting. They don't want to see abuse. They don't want to see violence. They want to see a world where they can explore their talents and their skills and their ability and have fun living life. Like they're not afraid to work and they're not afraid to do things, but they want to have fun living life. They want to live in a world that is clean, that they can go out and enjoy nature because we are an island and we are surrounded by beaches and rainforests. And all of those things match up to what I want. So for me personally, I want to be able to go and walk down the streets at any point of the day or night and feel safe and feel comfortable and not have to worry about where my next meal is going to come from. I love Trinidad and Tobago. I've had many opportunities to go and do work around the world. I've had job opportunities around the world. I've done some things out of country, but I really like the islands. It is a beautiful place to live. There's a lot of things for me to do here. And I want to be able to do that, to connect with people, to talk to people. There's a term we have here called liming that you know about. And for
Yes.
those who don't know about liming, it's like the cooler version of hanging out because we just have so many fun things to do. I want to be able to lime and not have to worry about feeling safe. Um, and not have to worry about anything. So, how do I contribute and help the younger generations to build a future where they can have this safe and sustainable life? But and very selfishly, I will also benefit from that because I'm going to have a safe and sustainable life as well.
Right. And could you tell us a little more on the Heroes Foundation? What is it exactly? Who are the members? How many members do you have? And what's the mission? What's the
Sure.
candidate profile?
Sure. So the organization started 23 years ago. by a man by the name of Philip Julian. Now, Philip Julian is the son of Professor Ken Julian, who, for those who may understand Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector, he was the man really responsible for creating the Point Lisas industrial estate. So back when Trinidad and Tobago was producing a lot of oil, there was a lot of associated gas with it that was just flared off. And Professor Julian pitched to the Prime Minister at the time, Dr. Eric Williams, an opportunity to go and convince petrochemical companies to come to Trinidad and Tobago and to build a petrochemical sector here and use that natural gas. First of its kind ever. And again, it was a bunch of Trinbagonians seeing the opportunity, convincing these big multinationals to come here and build one of the most integrated petrochemical sectors that the world has seen. Philip would have had opportunities to connect with a lot of people in Trinidad doing great things. He studied in Canada. He was the only person from the Caribbean studying where he was studying. And his father would write to him stories about people from Trinidad and Tobago doing things here, doing things around the world. So when he came back, he remembered how much that motivated him. And he wanted to find a way to help young people connect to heroes and achievers in the country so that they can see themselves in what people are, and the journeys that people have had and what people have done. So it started off there, and then they realized, well, young people need long-term support. Having events, having activities are nice, but to really support the sustainable development of young people, you need to journey with them over time. So they founded the Youth Development Program that we now call the Heroes Development Program. That is a 3-year program that we deliver to secondary school students ages 11 to 17 and also migrant youth who are in Trinidad and Tobago. It is focused primarily on psychosocial development, so their mental health, their well-being, understanding themselves, who they are, how they connect to the world around them. 21st century skills development, the things that people would have called soft skills back when I was going to school, things that we see as future-ready skills, and the skills that young people need for the future, like communication, critical thinking, teamwork, problem solving. And then we have 3 modules under the umbrella of sustainability education. The first one is equality and elimination of violence. And then it's energy, climate, and environmental sustainability. And then it's career and personal development and planning. The whole idea of the program is we've spent 3 years with children, most of them from underserved, underprivileged communities who don't have access to extracurricular activities, spend 3 years helping them to develop themselves. And during those 3 years, as they learn, they have to then come up with solutions to address issues and problems that they are seeing in their schools, in their communities, and lead behavior change projects there. So that our hope is that after you've gone through 3 years with us, you've learned about the world, you learned how to navigate, how to plan, you've faced challenges, you've had to adapt, you can apply those skills in your life. You have a plan for yourself. Things may not go as you plan, but you know how to be resilient. You know how to bounce back. You know how to adapt, so that they are more likely to go after their goals, more likely to succeed, and more likely to grow into the young people that we want to see in society.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. And I mean, what comes to my mind immediately, especially about Trinidadian youth, there seems to be some sort of crisis going on right now in Trinidad and Tobago, right? With the school violence, and the unaliving rate and whatnot. So I think my follow-up question would be like, why the youth? What pulls you toward working with young people over and over and over again? Just
So coming back to my personal experiences, I've seen how difficult it is to try to change systems when the people who are part of the decision making, or people who are responsible for decision making within those systems, don't necessarily have the ability to adapt and to learn and to be different. And I don't mean that in that they themselves personally aren't able to adapt and do things differently. It's sometimes based on how generally I think the public sector works in Trinidad and Tobago. There's so much to be done and not enough people to do it. So you're constantly just having to deliver. And when you're constantly in a mode of delivering, you don't have a lot of room to learn, grow, strategize, and pivot. Um, But when I work with young people and when I interact with young people, before they get into systems that tell them that you have to fit into a box or you have to be a particular way, there is a lot of hope there. There are a lot of ideas. These children have shared a lot of solutions to very simple things that make a lot of sense. For instance, reducing a school's electricity bill by switching off the lights in the schools in the night, which is something that adults can't seem to yet understand. And so the way that young people think, the way that children think is so simple that they often challenge you to question yourself and to really try to understand and explain why you're doing something. And for me, if we can get that creativity, that excitement that young people have, couple it with wisdom and insights and mentorship and guidance, them challenge us, the older ones support and also challenge them, then
Mhm.
that creates so many possibilities for the future. And I think that's why I particularly like working with young people, because it's always a surprise. Like I never know what to expect. I never know what's going to come out from the opportunities that we provide to them. But I do know that whatever comes out from it will be a lot better than if one particular generational group was looking at something.
And what is the major hurdles you think to your mission that you have
Funding
identified?
for funding for anything in the NGO space in Trinidad and Tobago is a challenge, particularly when you're investing in something like this. What we basically do is run a parallel school system, because we spend so much time with the children. We spend about anywhere between 2 to 4 contact hours with the children a week in the program itself. But then we're engaging and interacting with the children outside of that. We're engaging with the parents, the families, the teachers, the school system. There's a lot of engagement that are happening with the children. I think generally as a society, we've not given psychosocial development the sort of attention it's needed pre-COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, the pandemic triggered a lot of um, concern around things like mental health and well-being, things like psychosocial development, and we're still in that process of getting the schools, getting the healthcare system to where it really needs to be to deal with these issues. Heroes has been doing psychosocial development work for 23 years. So it's not something new to organizations like us and organizations who do this kind of work in the country. So helping people to see the value of that, not just on the impact of the children, but the monetary and financial value. A lot of people have, I think, from my experience, see NGOs as doing great work and being the saviors of society, but doing it out of the goodness of their heart. My thing is, we can't have people struggling to help people not struggle. That's always been a challenge, I think, overall. We're moving in the right direction.
Mhm.
um, Part of it is on NGOs like us, to upgrade our systems, fix our reporting, look at our monitoring and evaluation systems, and get up to the times. And we've done a great job in doing that, and we've been able to partner with organizations like UNICEF and the Pan American Development Foundation to bring in some big funding that the organization would not have seen in the past. Another part of it too is that the donors have to also see and understand that it starts with the young people. It starts at the formative years. I mean, one of our partners, the Answer Macal Group, amazing partners, because for them, they see Heroes Foundation working with secondary school students as a pipeline to their future employees, a pipeline to their future customers. So if they are investing now into the development of young people, then they're more than likely going to get employees who can come into the organization and be at the level that they want them to be. Employees who are strong, who are resilient, who can navigate spaces, who are confident, who are not afraid to challenge respectfully and to take bold steps. So it's been a journey of really moving the understanding of the work of NGOs in the country and
Mhm.
understanding the impact of the work that we are doing. But I think we're making a lot of progress there.
I have a question just to dig deeper here.
Mhm.
Is the Heroes Foundation an exclusive club? And how do you kind of like try to be more inclusive and really identify perhaps um, hidden talent that mightn't be forthcoming?
When you say exclusive, you mean as in the
How
participants?
do yeah, how do I become a member of the Heroes Foundation? How do the people perhaps that need to know about it the most, do they find out about it? Or is it just an exclusive club of very
So
ambitious individuals?
so I'll tell you the structure, how we operate, and then go into that. So we have a full-time team of people working in the organization doing the work that we do. It's about 12 of us here in the organization. Um, and it's really me as the CEO, a tech and administration coordinator who does all the tech work and all the administrative work that we don't have staff for, an admin assistant who really does all the finance work. And then the rest of the team is purely program focused on delivering the program and activities to children. Program manager, two coordinators focused on the in-school program, three coordinators on the migrant program, and a psychologist we have on part-time. As a team, we have a board of directors that provides governance and oversight and helps us with strategy and strategic direction. And then we deliver the program to children. Right now, we have about 200 children in the program. The last cycle, we had about 500 children. Those children come from different schools or different communities. In the schools in which we operate right now, for us to work in a school, we need strong administrative support from the school. So we need a principal that is willing to facilitate what is needed and support us. And in that, we need teachers who are willing to help us out. Because in the start initially, with connecting to the parents, connecting to the students, we need that administrative support there. The donors, the people who actually fund the school, the programs in the school, would either select schools based on the communities that they are active in, that they want to be a part of, or what we found in this particular cycle of donors, they're very much interested in the needs of the participants. So what we do at the start of every cycle is a needs assessment in the school, to find out what are the needs of the school. We offer the program as a voluntary program for participants. So you have to want to be in the program. And the school will recommend participants who they think will benefit from it. But at the end of the day, you have to want to be in it. And your authorized adult, your parent or your guardian, will be willing to support you in the program. So we offer it as a voluntary program. We do a needs assessment with all of the participants coming into the program and their family. And from that, we kind of get a sense of what the needs are, what modules in the program we're going to deliver to them. So I would say it is exclusive in terms of the fact that we can't reach everyone. We are limited by the donors we have and the number of schools that we can be in, to deliver the program. It is very much inclusive as the participants, being that we laid out up front what is the time commitment, what does the program look like, what is required of the participants. Because you're here to learn, you have a lot of fun doing it because we use a lot of fun and creative activities. They get to go on field trips and events and those kinds of things, but it is work. At the end of the day, we are spending other people's money to give you an opportunity that you didn't have. So from that perspective, it is very inclusive as to who can apply to be a participant. We try to keep school groups generally at 16 because it is a psychosocial based program and because we need to spend that individual time with participants. But then there are some schools where we have double that amount, and sometimes we have to split the groups and the coordinators there because there's such a great need for this kind of program in the school. And I mean, again, we have the migrant community as well, which our partners at the Pan American Development Foundation support. And again, that is any any migrant child in Trinidad and Tobago who's able to connect with the program. I think there is a slight barrier in that we just don't have the ability to deliver the program consistently in person, particularly with the migrant community. So you have to be able to access the program somewhere online. So we've gotten a lot of digital devices for people. There are shared internet services that they get. Sometimes some children will access our program through the libraries, through the National Library System. We've had a good relationship with them getting children library cards, letting them use the computer systems in the libraries. So I think that is a barrier. But we found ways to work around it and get people connected, even if it means they are calling in from somebody's phone, when the session is done. A lot of these sessions too, particularly for online, happen in the evening, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the evening, because that particularly with the migrant group, that's the time when the parents are home with the phones. So that's the time that the children will be able to get a phone and get access and then be able to join on the call. So our sessions will probably run from like 5 to 7, 6 to 8, 7 to 9 in the night with the children.
Right. What is, okay, I should have asked this at the beginning when you name dropped it. What is psychosocial development exactly?
Exactly that. It is so psycho, meaning with yourself internally. You're coming back to you, your sense of self, your sense of who you are, your values, your identity. Um, your beliefs, your mental health, your well-being, everything that makes you a person. Social meaning, how do you connect to the world around you? How does the world connect with you? So what are those interpersonal skills? What does relationships look like? What does relationship management look like? Um, how do you find a place and how do you find belonging in society? How do you navigate society? What is expected of you as a person in society? How do all of those things add pressures to you? How do you respond? How do you manage it? It's all about your sense of self and then your connectivity with society.
Okay, good. And okay, so to pivot a little bit, what keeps you up at night when you think about the future of Trinidad and Tobago's next generation? That keeps me up a lot at night, by the way.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what where are young people going to get money from? That because to me that is the bottom line issue to all of the problems that we are facing in society. When we look at when we look at violence, there is a lot of issues around violence that can be dealt with psychosocial development, with people understanding how to manage stress, how to manage pressure, how to respond to those things, understanding concepts like equality, and understanding what really is abuse and the different types of abuse. The psychosocial part of it can deal with that. But then there are incidents of violence that come from a lot of times people needing to find ways to survive. From the majority of people that we've interacted with and we work with, we haven't met anybody who wants to be a criminal, who wants to go and rob somebody. At the end of the day, people need to survive. People want to have nice things. People want to live good lives. So how do we help young people to be able to make money? That's the question they will ask everybody. When we're talking about jobs, when we're talking about career, how much money are you making? But for us, it's what are the opportunities out there? What can we find? What can they do? And that to me is really and truly what keeps me up at night because we're seeing young people so connected and digitally. I think this generation that we work with, this 11 to 17 generation that we work with, are more connected digitally than any generation before. They know about a lot more that is happening around the world. They connect a lot more digitally than they do in person. That I'll stick a little note there and say that's also why the psychosocial development is important because they're now interacting digitally as opposed to physically, which also creates some challenges and opportunities. But coming back to the connectivity, there's also a world of opportunities available to them through technology, through digital literacy, through artificial intelligence, through all of the things that I think people have shied away from. I mean, when we built De Novo, coming back to De Novo, we built it with a strong digital infrastructure where everything could have been controlled on your computer, even on your phone. I would be on the beach twice a month for every other Wednesday on the beach doing work connected to the organization, sending things, but I'm working from the beach because we could have done that. That's something difficult that was something difficult for people to understand at the time because we've generally not had a remote working culture in society. When I came across the heroes, I came across 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. So we had all these grand plans of spending the year moving digital. We literally had to sit down when the pandemic hit and spend the next week trying to go digital. And I had a bunch of people who've never used anything on the computer aside from a Word document or Gmail, sitting down learning about the Microsoft Enterprise Suite, learning about things like Teams and Zoom and how to use these tools, but also how to use the backend system and how do we use forms and register and collect data and how does that make data easier to see and understand and analyze. My team was doing that very quickly. Um, and then when the young people came on board the program, we gave them access to everything to go and learn about things like Microsoft because that's a tool that you're going to need to use in the world of work. They don't get those opportunities generally in our education system to really sit, play, explore, learn technology. We started to learn about a bunch of cool different gaming activities from the children themselves that we were able to take and adapt into the program to meet them where they are at. I think that that's a whole world of opportunities there to children. When we saw AI coming on board, I mean, we had the conversation. There were so many voices anti-AI. What we were trying to do with the children is, hey, AI is a tool. How can we help you to understand how to use this tool responsibly and leverage it? You don't want AI to do the work for you. You want to be able to use it as a tool to help you to be smarter, help you to work better. So for me, there are a lot of opportunities that I think are available to young people. I don't think we are adapting or moving towards those opportunities quickly enough. I've seen the challenges of young people being able to get into jobs and get into the workplace and do things that they really enjoy and feel passionate about. We're seeing it happening with the younger generations. When they're going into the workplace, they're going into the world of work and they're having challenges there and they're leaving jobs and they're jumping from jobs and they're talking about a number of mental health issues in the workplace. I don't know if it's still around, but we had that whole phase where everything was toxic.
Yeah.
Everything for the Gen Zs and the lower ends of the millennial was toxic, as opposed to understanding what are the goals, what are the needs, and then how do you take a look at the people who you have in the system and kind of now evolve the system to meet your goals, meet your needs, but also consider the people. Because at the end of the day, all of the systems that we have are people.
Yeah.
And as people change, as values change, as people's skill sets and abilities and understanding of the world changes, the systems are going to need to adapt as well. And I'll give one example that kind of ties into the previous questions that you spoke about. So I was part of a group um, in the energy sector when I was there that dealt with communication and community relations of all of the upstream energy sector professionals. Again, I was the youngest one, always sitting at the table. I was in my 20s. Most of these people were in their 40s and up. And one person, very senior, very well-respected person, said, I don't understand why you millennials need to question everything. Why don't you all just listen and do what we ask you to? Why do you all need to ask why? And I had to explain to them that when I was in secondary school, when I was between those ages of 11 to 17, one of the most formative time of my life, not only was I living in a very rural community, Princestown at the time, going to school in city San Fernando, which was a complete change to my life from before. I went through a time where we moved from having no computers to having these big desktop to computers, to then having dial-up internet, to then having wireless internet, all while I was in secondary school. We went from having these big brick phones to having these small smartphones, again, all while I was in secondary school. Every single year of my life was some kind of change, and that's something that my generation experienced. So we are constantly questioning, we're constantly asking why. It's something that the older generations would have experienced too, but they would have experienced that within all of the other experiences that they've had. And for me, it was really important in being able to help people understand the differences of experiences that contribute to why people are a particular way. So when we look at the Gen Zs and we look at the younger generations coming up, they are experiencing more change than ever before, and they're more connected to that change. So, to answer the question that you did ask, what keeps me up at night is always worrying that young people aren't going to be given the best opportunities that they can get, which will result in them not being able to access positive development pathways. And if you can't access positive development pathways, then the opportunities that exist to get into negative development pathways are real and probably a lot more easier. Not probably, first for sure, because we've seen it, are certainly a lot more easier to get into, to put food on the table. And I am concerned that if we do not act quickly enough and we do not evolve our systems quickly enough, we're going to be going down a road where the tipping point will not be towards the positive.
Do you think we've passed that tipping point already, or you still have hope?
I don't think we have. It's also one of the concerns that keeps me going, and I know it keeps my board of directors going and concerned as well, because it's something that I think they're all concerned about. We have a society where the people in society need to have opportunities, need to become their best selves. And if we don't provide opportunities for that to happen, then we'll tip in a negative direction. I think we've not acted quickly enough. I think there were a lot of opportunities in the past that we should have and could have leveraged, but I don't think we're beyond that. I think we do have a lot of opportunities that are available. I mean, we have a new government in Trinidad and Tobago, which always signals change. We have a lot of, I think, private sector companies that have a lot of younger leadership too coming up. So some of our big companies have a lot of younger leadership, and you're seeing the organizations changing. You're hearing it from the employees how the organizations are changing. We have a lot of NGOs, we have a lot of civil society organizations too that are part of the change process. I've seen change. Um, I've seen a little bit of change come from the public sector, but I've also seen a lot of people in the public sector who want to facilitate change. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to address the challenges and to make the change before it happens. But to me, it's going to come down to people wanting to do it. As I
Right.
keep saying, we have to want to do it. We have to want it so. And it's going to require some work. So we're going to have to create these spaces where we're open and willing to think critically and speak critically about things, understanding that we're not necessarily attacking people or speaking about people, we're speaking about systems. And we're going to have to be open to exploring new, different ideas and listening to people a bit too in the conversation, because none of us sees all the moving parts. But the more people we have together talking about the moving parts and talking about the challenges and exploring potential solutions, the better our chance of actually addressing the challenges
Affecting
and helping
change.
us tip to the good direction.
Yeah. I mean, through my conversations, one thing that I've kind of noticed is with more of the old hands of activism and civil society, they have essentially given up and changed direction to affect change within the private sector itself and not within civil society. You have experience in the private sector, in energy, in media, and policy. Why are you sticking with civil society and trying to affect change in that way rather than doing it through private endeavors?
So for me, I've come from the private sector. Um, I'm in this civil society space, but I've also had the opportunity to work with the state on a number of initiatives. So I've been able to see a bit of everything in the country. Um, for me, the state does not necessarily have the resources or the capacity to take on some of the big changes that are needed. Private sector, I think, understands and wants to have change and are willing to fund some of the change that needs to happen, but they may not necessarily have the expertise. Civil society is in a space where the work is that exact thing. The work is about making society better. And it's real work. It's real work, it's scientific work, it's data-driven work. Um, and civil society offers the space to be able to do this transformational work that I think the other spaces don't necessarily offer in the way that it needs to be done. For me, the big thing is, and the big goal is getting civil society, private sector, public sector, multilateral organizations all working together. That to me is the sweet spot. That to me is where we're going to see the big changes.
So, I mean, presumably we're talking about your interactions with Gen Z, perhaps Generation Alpha. You're a millennial,
I
so you're
am a
quite
millennial.
young. What is some interactions you've had with Gen Z, maybe Gen Alpha, that have taught you something and that have changed the way that you lead? So what are the insights you've gotten from Gen Z that's different from your lived experience as a millennial?
Patience. Patience. I come from corporate energy sector, high paced, high energy. A lot of things need to get done. Usually working with a high quality team of professionals. And it's a very different working dynamic. Now I came out into a space where that was not the environment I was in. So I had to learn to meet people where they're at. I had to start with my staff because the staff I had at the organization weren't necessarily the team I would have been a part of or worked with in the energy sector. And I think at the end of the day, they were all in this organization because they want to be here and they want to do good work. But some of them, again, simple things like never having used a computer before in their life, doing great development work, but never having to understand M&E, yeah, and things in their life before. And when I interacted with the children, so the first thing I did when I came across was set up a youth advisory team. Because for me, if I'm going to be working with young people, I need to understand what young people are thinking, but I also need to get their input into what we are doing because it has to make sense with them. And then going into there and listening to them and hearing them. I mean, I was never on TikTok. And the first thing they told me, the first day I met with them, I was what? I was 30 years old when I became CEO of Heroes Foundation. So I am thinking I am a young spring chicken. I have my whole life ahead of me. I am young and bright and fresh. And I sit on this call, and one of these children on the call goes, "Yeah, Pops, so if you're not on TikTok, you can't talk to us, you know. You wouldn't understand what we're saying." And my mind was blown. Firstly, Pops caught me off guard. But
Right.
then the whole TikTok thing, and when I went onto TikTok, being somebody who spent my life doing communication as my job, moving into the TikTok space and seeing the dynamics of how communication was changing, how information was being disseminated differently, it it it, it allowed me to really see how we needed to change how we interact with young people. So on one part, there's a lot of learning about being patient and also meeting people where they're at, understanding where they are at so that we can deliver where I can deliver my message, I can get to my objectives because I know where they are at and what it takes to move them along from where they are at to where we would like them to be. But also, how do we communicate and how do we engage with people? Because while for us, social media is not separate from life. Anything that you do in your personal time outside of your program or outside of school or outside of work for us contributes to who you are as a person, coming back to psychosocial development, contributes to how you understand, how you connect. So with social media, it was understanding how to make messages easier and simpler for the children, how to be more creative, how to move into videos. We have a whole module of our program on equality and elimination of violence that is delivered with secondary school students on camera doing activities, doing skits, as opposed to a facilitator standing up in front of the class. So on one part, patience, two, meeting people where they're at, but also understanding communication and how people engage with your messaging.
Yeah. I mean, one of the traits of Gen Z is perceived that they are easily triggered, they need safety warnings, need safe spaces. So I'm curious, what makes your youth program more than just a feel-good initiative for extremely sensitive people?
So it's the children we've worked with. Safe spaces for us shows up as being spaces where young people feel as they are like as if they are heard, as if they are trusted, and when what they share remains confidential. Um, because they are getting an opportunity to learn and to grow with the program. They're
Mhm.
also going to be open and they're also going to share things. We get a number of disclosures of things like abuse that happen in communities, in homes, in the schools that we have to deal with. They will come and speak to us in the program as opposed to going to their guidance counselors because they'll say, well, if I go and talk to the guidance counselor, the whole school will know my business. And for us, it shows up as, respect for people, respect for the individuals. The young people feel respected where they are. We challenge them a lot. So this when you come into a heroes program, you're having fun, but you are being challenged. You are being challenged to be your best self. And so about creating that understanding with the young people that what we are pushing them towards is to be their best self, but also listening to them. So I mean, I understand that I fully well understand that notion that Gen Zs and these young people um I mean, I've heard people call them snowflakes, where you have to
Mhm.
be super soft and super scared of what you do as if you're walking around on eggshells. That's not the experience we have working with young people. From what we see, young people are waiting for opportunities. What they need are safe spaces where they can access those opportunities, where they feel like they are part of the process, they are part of creating the space, where the opportunities that they are getting line up to the opportunities that they would like to get or to the vision that they have for themselves, and where they can actually see the change that is happening. For us, a big thing is when young people talk to us, we listen. We don't promise anything that we cannot deliver on. That's a big concern from the younger generations. When we ask them, well, why don't you trust your teachers? Why don't you trust people in authority? Why don't you trust the police? Well, people will come and they'll say all sorts of things and they never do it. They come and they ask us and they use us for different things and they want to have children and things, but then we ask for things and they say we'll get it and we won't get it. That's a challenge. When people feel like they can't trust the authority figure that they are working with, they're not going to want to be a part of the work that you're doing. Also, creating safe spaces means that you respect them and you also make sure that you hold them accountable because respect works both ways and accountability isn't a bad thing. For some reason, somewhere along the way, accountability has seemed to become a bad thing. But for us, accountability means that we are agreeing to do A, B, and C. If we can't deliver on A, B, and C, how are we communicating around it? How are we talking about it? And then how are we not adapting if there are some challenges affecting us? Or how are we making sure that, well, you committed to do A, B, and C? So we have something called the Heroes 21st Century Leader. That is what we kind of work towards getting these children to envision themselves as. It's a little graphic we have with a boy and a girl, and we put it up in the program in the schools, and it speaks to young people who are resilient, who are productive, who are positive decision makers, who are critical thinkers. And the idea is that when you come into the program, you are committing to work towards being this best person. You're gonna slip, you're gonna fall sometimes. It happens to all of us, but you have to want to be doing that. And so you're coming in a space where we are giving you all of these opportunities that you're not gonna get, but you have
Mhm.
some responsibility to play in getting there too. So
Yeah.
if you're feeling safe and if you're doing things and we're creating the accountability, we see the young people there. I mean, we can ask these young people to come and show up to be part of an activity. They want to do projects, they want to do campaigns, they want to do things in their school. They have to spend their weekends, they have to spend their evenings. They will show up to do it because they feel like they're part of something. And I think the challenge that we've been seeing with the Gen Zs, with the younger millennials, particularly in the corporate setting, in the workplace setting, comes back to how are you creating your space? Because if younger people in particular don't feel like they belong and they have a voice, when in their lived reality, particularly on social media, everybody has a voice and everybody can claim a space and everybody can get a following, then you're going to meet conflict. And I think there are a lot of things that older folks could learn, that private sector could learn, that public sector could learn when you look at how you navigate spaces and create spaces for young people well.
Yeah. I mean, you're trying to make changes, right? You're trying to affect change or be a change maker. And I'm sure that the system has said no to you a few times, right? Tell me about your approach when you hear no. We're not doing that. When established powers sort of push back, how do you approach that?
So I tell people that my superpower is Trini Bad Mind.
Right.
And for those of you all who don't know what Trini Bad Mind is, that is
Mhm.
when somebody tell you you can't do something or you shouldn't do something. You go and you do it out of spite. You go and say, well, you told me I cannot do that. I'm going to show you that I can do that. So my Trini Bad Mind activates when the data and the information that I'm seeing in front of me says that something needs to get done. Um, and because we have so many different types of people from different walks of life involved with the organization behind this cause, it's I wouldn't say it's necessarily easy, but there are opportunities to find ways to navigate no's and challenges. For instance, I will give this one example. When I came across the heroes in 2020, I came from the energy sector where HSSE, health safety is the Bible. There are guidelines and standards for everything. You can't have cords running around your office at all because somebody could trip. It's simple, simple things. There are guidelines for everything. I moved into the Heroes Foundation where Heroes was an affiliate of Big Brothers Big Sisters International. So we would do the Big Brothers Big Sisters mentorship program, and Heroes had a safeguarding and protection framework based on Big Brothers Big Sisters International. Of course, my first question coming in was, how does our standard match up to the national standard? To find out that there is no national standard for safeguarding and protection. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we need to fix that because according to what we are doing and what we're seeing with the children, there needs to be some kind of national standard because heroes may not know everything. We may not know what the world out there says. So we reached out to then the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs, the Director of Child Affairs, and was like, so what is going on? Why are there no standards? And when he explained the position, they had the child policy. Part of the child policy was to roll out safeguarding and protection standards. They've been trying to get it through, but it's been a challenge because there's so many things happening. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll help. So I got a bunch of other NGOs together. And I said, you all, we need safeguarding and protection standards. Can you please write to the Office of the Prime Minister, Gender and Child Affairs and tell them that you need safeguarding and protection standards? And they did. And there were a bunch of NGOs writing and reaching out and saying, we need this. And the Safeguarding and Protection Committee got moving. We were able to be part of the Safeguarding and Protection Working Group with the state, with UNICEF, with a bunch of different players. And we were able to get the National Safeguarding and Protection Framework rolled out for the country. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's an easy example. That's a nice feel-good example, but there are
It
many,
is.
many not so feel-good examples. There are the examples of when we have to deal with children who have been victims of abuse. But the thing is, we find ways to do it. So again, coming out of that safeguarding framework committee and the UNICEF Child Protection Working Group, I made sure that Heroes was connected to the Children's Authority, to the police service, so that if for some reason we make a report somewhere and it's not getting through, I have your number. I will
Yeah.
be messaging you at 2 o'clock in the morning and asking you to find out what is going on with this case, what is going on with this issue. And those are the kinds of things that that we will do, that I will do when I see a challenge. And I don't think it's from a lack of trying from people. I think generally and genuinely people want what is best for children,
Yeah.
but we may not necessarily know what that looks like because what may have been the priorities and the needs for children 20, 30, 40 years ago is not necessarily the priorities or the most important need for children right now. Um, One of the other things that we found is that beneficiaries, young people, people who are experiencing the issues that we're trying to fix have generally not been involved in decision-making discussions. So one of the things that I set up when I came to Heroes after setting up that youth advisory team was creating forums where we had young people sitting down with decision makers to get their voices into the conversation. There's an event that we do call the Future Forum, that it is basically young people, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, sitting down with government ministers, with state technocrats, with business leaders, talking about the future that they want, the challenges that they are seeing to getting to that future, and the ideas that they have that they think should be implemented. And it's them leading the discussion. Because for us, me as an adult, if I go to another adult and I have challenges with something that you feel personally connected to, you may not want to listen to me. But if a little child, if a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old sits down to you and says, well, hey, I am trying to get to X, but I can't get to X because of all these things, it forces you to think a little differently. And for me personally, and for the whole organization, I think that's one of the ways that we try to get around or get to overcoming challenges in the big picture. Just finding creative, innovative, different ways to get the message across differently, and pushing and fighting where we need to.
So, I mean, you're talking about approach that is inclusive. So, but what is this real inclusivity? What does that look like to you exactly? Is it just youth engagement, or are you looking at other factors to judge inclusivity?
So I think it's I think a very simple way to look at it is if you are truly inclusive, then that means you have all of the people affected by something involved in how you deal with and how you manage it. And I think that applies to every single thing. So when you're talking about youth in particular, and you want to look at how do you provide opportunities, how do you deal with youth violence, how do you deal with youth challenges, however you're coming up with the solution to deal with that problem, however you're coming up with your management plan, you get people who are involved in the space into that. So you get the young people involved, you get teachers involved, you get caregivers involved, you get civil society involved, you get parents involved, and you kind of talk through and you kind of work through, but you get the inputs of the different people who are involved into something. When you're talking about a country and you're talking about the economic development of a country, you get all of the different players involved. You're not just going to talk about the economic development of a country and say, okay, great, well, private sector, you all are the ones who run a big part of the economy, you all figure out the problem. No, because it's not just private sector alone involved. It's not just businesses alone involved. You probably want to get the other organization. You want to get the environmental groups in there. Because if we're talking about economic development, we want to say what connects to the environment. You want to get your social groups inside there as well. Because how does economic and social development work together and go hand in hand? It's just how do you look at the decision-making systems around anything. If you're looking at crime and violence in a particular community, then you're going to need to have the people who are in the community involved. Just like if you're looking at how do you reduce um, criminal activity, you're not just going to try to sit down and think about it as somebody who's not been a part of criminal activities. You're going to want to hear the stories of perpetrators and understand, why did you get into crime? What do you regret? What would you have done differently? What would you have needed to not end up down this road? And I think that's what it comes down to me, as much as possible, getting as many different perspectives that are impacted by an issue involved in how you deal with and manage an issue.
Right. So you have an inclusive environment. You connect with all of these different partners. There's a handshake, there's a headline. Now, how do you turn this into a real outcome?
And that's why we really, really do love the partners that we work with. Because they are engaged throughout the program. So we have this 3-year plan. We have a curriculum that is about 14 modules or something. We don't deliver all 14 modules. Based on the needs assessments, we look at what is needed. We come up with the implementation plan for the year, and our partners in particular get involved. So it's not necessarily just us at Heroes doing it. It's connecting the young people now to people who are doing work in different spaces, particularly around the career development part of the modules. But then around the things like the environmental action activities, it's getting people involved in building an ecosystem. So on one part, we have this program that we deliver. We have a monitoring and evaluation framework for that program where there are assessments and we're able to measure the work, we're able to see the change in their mental health and well-being, we're able to see the change in their understanding of topics, we're able to see them grow. There's academic support too that we've now added into it because there's been an increasing need for additional academic support in fun, creative ways. Coming out of the program, these young people have to do activities. They have to lead projects. So these young people so now we're investing in them and it's nice, but it's also them going to lead projects. For instance, equality and elimination of violence is a module in the program that came about because the young people wanted that. When we were redeveloping our curriculum in 2021 with the support of UNICEF, the beneficiaries of the program, people who were past participants of the program, along with all of the other experts that we had on that, were part of shaping that curriculum. And a big issue for them was, how do we deal with violence? How do we deal with discrimination? How do we deal with the whole concept of equality? And these are young people who are there talking about things like gender equality, LGBTQI plus equality. Just we have a big racial diversity in Trinidad and Tobago. So race came up in the conversations. And what it really came down to at the end of the day were the young people telling us, hey, at the end of the day, people are people. And they don't see that as an issue. What they would like to see is people be a chance to be people. And we don't have to deal with all of these problems in the schools because from the work that we've done, a lot of times when we see instances of violence or we see instances of abuse, it comes from some sort of defined difference between people that for some reason is amplified in the conversations and how they interact, or for some reason triggers someone. That's one of the things. The other things they're like people are just stressed and something triggers you and you act out. But there was this there has been this notion of, well, people may be less than I am, which will allow me to act a certain way towards them. And for us, the young people didn't really like that. So one of the activities that they would have done that same cycle when we came with the program is we had about 500 young people lead these activities against violence and abuse, where we did a online social media campaign that reached over 700,000 people online. And then we had these 500 children go out into their schools and their communities and do workshops in the schools, do workshops with parents, do workshops in the communities, do public actions in the community and reach over 15,000 people directly. So young people going out, the young people in the program going and hosting weekly workshops in the school assemblies to talk about bullying, to talk about mental health, to talk about well-being. And the schools also talk about the impact. So the schools that we are in will talk about how they've seen the level of school fights go down. None of the children, how they see the behavior change in our children, when none of the children are getting into any sort of physical altercations or verbal altercations in the school. Um, when we connect to the environmental project, it's connecting the young people to not just us, but to other opportunities, because we can't do everything. And we love to work with other NGOs in the country. So how do we connect you to, if you're passionate about environmental action, how do we connect you to environmental action? How do we help young people set up home gardens and school gardens and community gardens? Because coming out of this, you have to do something. So there are always measurable outcomes to the program that we do. The big goal for us, which we've not been able to see yet because since the program has been revised, we've only had one 3-year cycle, is to track these students beyond the secondary school and see where they end up. Because if, for instance, I have 6 corporate partners, and in the next 10 years, children who came through my program, children who were sponsored by those companies, are in those companies, starting their professional life in those companies, that to us is a big win for everybody.
Oof. I mean, wow. I could see that you're definitely a very good communicator and that you're mission oriented. For a little bit, we spoke offline about your belief in public memory. And I think this is a good way to end the podcast. And national storytelling. Where does that come from?
I think Trinidad and Tobago is one of the most diverse countries in the world.
Not
We,
just not just racially, but also religiously too.
I
Yeah.
think, racially, religiously, economically, there's so much diversity here in this country, um, that it really feels like we are a little world inside of the world. And there's a lot of our history and a lot of the things that have contributed to who we are as a country, who we are as people that we just simply do not know. Our food culture in and of itself is rich. We have the best food in the world, and I do not ever say otherwise. But that food is also history and memory and stories. So I was explaining to somebody from the UK about something we have called doubles, which comes from the East Indian heritage, which is a fried dough with chana or chickpea, curry chickpea, and it's made with all sorts of sauces. And I explained, well, in India, you will get that, and people will sit down at a table and break the dough and scoop up the food and eat it. In here, when you had the indentured workers, they didn't have that luxury. They had to eat quickly and be on the run. So it evolved into this thing called doubles that is now this street food on every corner, that is a part of life and something that the world enjoys. And
Yeah.
then,
Something interesting too about doubles is that it is national headlines when it goes
yes,
when the prices go up, right? So
yep, yep.
it's a political issue. So it really
Mhm.
is a some sort of national breakfast dish and a food that the poor people rely on to sustain themselves. But it is interesting, there's a political drama when price of doubles goes up by $1 and whatnot. So anyway, sorry.
No, 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 that makes sense because there's so much connectivity to the things that make us who we are. And I like food because food is an easy example to see that connectivity because the example you gave made sense because it's not just food. It's not just about meeting a meal and drink. There's the social connection, there's the economic connection, there's the political connection with it. When we look at things I was explaining to somebody yesterday about cow heel and oxtail, things that were discarded pieces of meat when we had slavery in the Caribbean, we had slavery in Trinidad and Tobago, the slaves would have gotten, and they found such creative ways to take that and turn that into some of the most delicious things that you will ever eat in the world, and how that has evolved over the years, and how it's moved now from being very cheap and very affordable to now becoming this gentrified food, that a lot of people have turned into this sort of now high cost product, and it came from being discarded pieces of food. I think that there's a lot of things in our history, and I use food because it's an easy example to see, because people understand food. But when we look at our cultures, when we look at our values, when we look at our political system, our economic systems, when we look at how communities are developed, how communities are managed, how we police spaces, how we create power structures in spaces, all of these things have been impacted by our diversity along different times in our history. Some of the big systems were designed not by us and not for us. And that was then taken up by us and carried on without necessarily changing and adapting. So when we look at who we are as a country, it's very important to understand our history. It's very important to understand our story. We just had a big hoorah for the last few years about the Christopher Columbus statues in Trinidad and Tobago, whether they should be retained, whether they should be removed. And that sparked a whole other conversation about national identity, who we are as a people, where do we come from, what are our values, what are our aspirations. I mean, Trinidad and Tobago's motto is together we aspire, together we achieve. What are we aspiring towards? And how are we doing that together? We have so many different parts of the world that are here, that make us beautiful and powerful and give us, I think, opportunities that are ripe and sometimes I think overripe. There are so many opportunities because we are so diverse, but also because we are so connected. Because the diverse communities here are also connected to the countries and the spaces in which they've come from. We have great connections with the diplomatic corps, with countries from around the world. We have so many embassies in here in Trinidad and Tobago that mesh and blend so well with us. So for me, understanding who we are as a people, understanding how we've come to where we are at, understanding what we want to achieve and where we want to go, all need to be connected so that we can fill out the map that and really chart that way forward for where we want to go.
Okay. Lawrence, wow. I feel like we could talk for an hour again, but time
We
is up.
definitely can.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much.